So I am in a very, very relaxed mood right now. It's currently Friday night. I just took a very warm bubble bath because I like to take those to unwind sometimes. You can see there's a reddish hue to my skin. My hands are very raisiny. Sometimes I feel like I get a little bit too worked up on things with this channel. And I decided to show you the other side of me, the slightly calmer side, which, I don't know, it might just become unraveled by the end of this video, but we're going to try to become RGT85 in this video. And today we're going to be talking about something I have been seeing pop up from various YouTubers really throughout this past week. Something to do with Ocarina of Time and an Ocarina of Time remake for the Nintendo Switch 2. And there's new news and information about it. And I got to thinking, well, I mean, that would be really cool. Ocarina of Time, that's my favorite Legend of Zelda game of all time. I still remember getting that game. I had a box in front of my apartment when I was like 13 years old from Nintendo. I came inside and I opened it, and lo and behold, it was the collector's edition of the Ocarina of Time. I quickly called my mother, who was at work because I had just gotten home from school, and I was like, Mom, Nintendo loves me. I guess because I have a Nintendo Power subscription, they sent me a copy of Ocarina of Time. And she was like, you're an idiot. I bought that for you. You weren't supposed to open it. And I was like, well, I mean, the damage has been done. Ocarina of Time is a legendary game, but if you're a younger gamer or someone who didn't grow up with the N64, you know, those controls can be a little bit hectic. I think you could easily work through it with a little bit of determination and whatnot, and I definitely think it's worth working through once you kind of get past the controller learning curve. I just beat the game earlier this year, and I absolutely love it. But this is definitely a game that could use a little bit of a facelift. Now, of course, there is the 3DS version of the game, which is great too. I'll probably be showing mostly footage from that game in this video as far as like the trailer is concerned and whatnot. And, you know, a fantastic version of the game. But it's now 2025, and an Ocarina of Time remake, you know, or a remaster, keeping things very similar. Like, I don't want a Final Fantasy VII style remake. I just want to keep it similar, but add in new stuff with modern controls and, of course, modern graphics. So everyone's talking about this, and I'm like, what did I miss? I must have missed something here. So I decided I'm going to get to the bottom of this, and I don't give a damn who's at the top. If you recognize what that quote is from, your teenage years were just as messed up as mine. And I ended up finding the source of this information. It's actually coming to us from something that happened earlier this week on a podcast that I'll have a link to in the description box down below, should you want to watch the video for yourself. But this information is coming to us from an individual named Nash Weedle. And within this video, he basically talks about how he talked about there being an Ocarina of Time remake years ago, but games take time to make. And these games, of course, don't just come out overnight, so this is something that has been in development for quite a while. He seemed very confident in this happening. And then I got to thinking, well, okay, Nash Weedle. He is allegedly a Nintendo leaker. What's his track record look like? You know, I've dove into him before to kind of look around and see what he was about, but I decided to do a little bit of a refresher, and we're going to do that here. So let's take a look here. We have a Reddit post from 2 years ago. Nash Weedle says Metroid Prime 4 is currently in marketing planning. Metroid Prime 4 just a year away. I am so happy about this information. Well, it's 2 years later, and we actually still don't have a release date for Metroid Prime 4. So I'm not quite sure that, you know, that was kind of the best sort of, you know, the best sort of thing to kind of talk about when it comes to, you know, trying to be legitimate, trying to, you know, put some information out there. Nintendo rumored to be collaborating with Google on a standalone headset. And that information is coming to us from Nash Weedle about 2 years ago as well, from Totally Not a Mean Guy reporting this over on Reddit. Okay, you know, maybe it'll happen. You know, maybe. And look, there are things that Nash Weedle has gotten right. I guess the theory of this is that with the anniversary somewhat coming up for Ocarina of Time, with them doing a Legend of Zelda movie, they would want something Zelda related to possibly coincide with the release of it, or they want to celebrate the anniversary of Ocarina of Time, the 30th anniversary, in a couple of years. So this is going to be the way to do it, with a full-on remake or remaster. And all of this sounds very nice. Like, it sounds ideal, and especially when you kind of look at, what Nintendo has done with The Legend of Zelda, and how, the Switch 2 kind of doesn't really have, obviously they've done some free updates to certain games like Echoes of Wisdom and Link's Awakening. They're doing stuff with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, with patches as well that cost money, or if you have the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack, it'll be included in that. And those patches definitely breathe some new life into those games, but at its core, they're still the same games. So if you've played and defeated those games, there's really not much reason for you to revisit them, unless you just want to mess around and look around at the world and see how much better it runs. So a remake of a legendary Legend of Zelda game, no pun intended, would make sense to people. It's obviously would be sort of a stopgap before the next mainline Legend of Zelda game, which who knows how long that's going to take to create, because we don't even necessarily know which sort of direction they're going to go in. Now, you could say, well, could a company, like Grezzo be working on it? But allegedly, according to Nash Weedle, this is an in-house Nintendo project. And I just think it's something that, it's almost one of those things where you can just say something like very generic, something that would make sense, something that would make money, something that people want to hear and would be excited about. And then if it doesn't ever happen, you just kind of brush it under the rug. Oh, plans must have changed. Things must have changed within Nintendo, and they decided not to do this, because obviously this would be a huge hit for older people such as myself, who grew up with Ocarina of Time, people that consider Ocarina of Time to be the best game in the Legend of Zelda franchise. But realistically speaking, if you really want to get down to the nitty-gritty of which game really needs a sort of modern style remake, I would think A Link to the Past would be potentially a better candidate, because at least The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time is like a 3D world, and you can explore this 3D world and have fun with it. And I think the gameplay still holds up very well. The gameplay in A Link to the Past holds up very well too, but obviously it's a pixel art style. Like, even if you did like an HD 2D sort of thing with that, I think it would really pop and be something absolutely incredible. But Nintendo never did anything with that. They've never done anything with that game. That game just seems to be a standalone sort of thing. And you could say, well, RGT, like you said before, they did do a 3DS release of the game, and they did. But was that really a full-on sort of remake or remaster of the game? Or was it just a way to sort of pad out the 3DS library with, games that people have a lot of nostalgia for? Because that wasn't the only game that released on there. You also had Majora's Mask. You also had Star Fox 64. The 3DS was kind of a different beast when it came to games, and Nintendo, maybe they anticipated more third-party support for the system. Maybe they anticipated greater sales at the launch of the 3DS, and kind of when that didn't really happen, they kind of had to come up with some ideas and come up with them fast to fill out the library. That's not to diminish the quality of work of those 3DS titles, but I say all that to say, it sounds ideal. It sounds great, but I also just think that there's really no new information here. To say that a game that you allegedly leaked years ago is still being worked on and these things take time and stuff like that, like, sure, but we still don't really have any sort of concrete evidence of this being a thing. It just sounds to me more like a pipe dream, more like an auto, like a tier wish list, and like that's S tier. Because for me, there are a handful of games that I would love to see be given a a modern reimagining, or, you know, a modern sort of visual upgrade and a modern control upgrade. You know, games like Metal Gear Solid, and I understand there's Twin Snakes, which is kind of why I want Twin Snakes on Nintendo Switch Online for the GameCube. I absolutely adore that game. But I think Ocarina of Time is right up there, if not the #1 game. And it sounds ideal. It sounds like a perfect thing. But does it sound a little too perfect? Does it sound a little bit too much like what you want to hear? I don't know, man. I don't know. I just felt like we needed to talk about this because I've seen people just going absolutely goo goo gaga over this situation. And it's kind of like, you know, how long have we been talking about this? I'm sure you could look on this channel and find an Ocarina of Time remake video. I'm pretty sure I made one at least 4 years ago, because I don't think I ever made, I don't know, maybe I did make one when I lived here, but I'm pretty sure the old apartment that I used to live in, I'm pretty sure I made an Ocarina of Time video there. And that had to be at least 4 years ago at this point in time. So it's like, how long are we going to talk about this? You know, how long are we going to keep hoping and, you know, keep dreaming that this is going to happen before we kind of realize that maybe it's never going to happen? Maybe you got what you got when it comes to Ocarina, enjoy it, and move on with your life. Let me know what you think of this, though, in the comment section down below. And let me know what you think of more calm and reserved RGT in this video. Did you enjoy it? I mean, don't get used to it, but, you know, I like to give you a little bit of, you know, switch things up a little bit. Let's go, Knicks. Let's make it 3-3. Let's make it a 7-game series. Let's handle business. Let's go to the finals. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Be sure to like, comment, and share. Hit the bell as well. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.